Okay, welcome everybody. We're attempting to decipher and really get into Parsha Balak, and according to the Kliyakar, of course. So we're in chapter 22 of Numbers, and we're going to start with verse 2. And let me give you a little bit of rundown in English for these several verses we're going to talk about. But I want you to pay attention that Israel is called by 4 different nouns. They're right? If you, I don't know about grammar, but if I was a grammarian, is that how you say it? I would have touched it up. I would have used better sense. So we want to know what God wanted us to learn when he says, Balak the son of Tzipor saw all that Israel, that's the first time we're called Israel, had done to the Amorite. Right? In this verse, we're called Israel. Now, last week's Parsha, it's true, we had a war with the Amorites. It's true. Moab became very frightened because of the people, number 2. So we're called Israel, we're called the people, because it was numerous. And Moab was disgusted in the face of the children of Israel. Now we're called the children of Israel. Before we were called Israel, and then we were called Ha'am, the people, and then we were called the children of Israel. And the last verse we're going to deal with, Moab said to the elders of Midian, what's he going to Midian for? Now the congregation, we're called a congregation, will lick up the entire surrounding as an ox licks up the greenery of the field. So really the first question the Kliyakar wants to know is, what did he see that he didn't see before? Meaning, all this fear that's coming about, what happened in Egypt 40 years earlier? Hey, let me tell you something. There were 10 plagues, if you didn't know that. There was a splitting of the sea. I mean, there were miracles. I don't know how many, because the Haggadah tells us it might even 250, not just 10. All kinds of miracles and signs and wonders were happening. It was a real light show. Now, what is it now that he saw that he didn't see earlier? The question he asked like this: Hello, Nisei Mitzrayim Ha'Gedoli Meilu. Wasn't the great miracles that happened 40 years earlier even greater than just what happened in last week's Parsha? Lama lo hitbonim ba'oten gedolos v'noros asher asa Hashem. Why wasn't he concentrating and focusing and contemplating what happened 39, 40 years earlier than what just happened last week? First question. The second one he asked is, Israel's mentioned here by 4 names. You saw it. I circled it. Yisrael, the Jewish, right? Israel. Ha'am, the people. B'nai Yisrael, the children of Israel. And Kahal, congregation. And he goes through the verses. Okay, so we saw the verses. We don't have to go through them. But he says, Hello, Davarhu. This is extremely unusual. This never happens. Go through the whole Torah. Where do you see in 2 verses that were called 4 names? You don't. This is it, right here. So we're going to have to examine why. So he says, the explanation for the matter is, you know how the world works? That the Malachim, kings, you know what they have? They have chronicles. First of all, most of them are either literate or have someone in their chambers who are literate, and they have a library that has all the inner workings of history. They know the history. So kings have Sefer Divrei Yamim, some types of chronicles, Asher Lav Ketuvim Kol Karos Miyamim Rabim, which is within those chronicles are all of history of either their nation or the surrounding nations, perhaps even of the world. Aval Hamon Am, but the masses, Enam Yudoim Ki'im Hahoda. The only thing that the masses, usually illiterate, are you aware that 99% of the world population for 99% of the time has been illiterate? It's only the last 150, 200 years, maybe give it 3, that it's been on the rise. The Jewish people, 99% of our history has been 99% literate, not illiterate. Because there's a command in the Torah to teach your sons Torah. You have to learn Torah and you have to teach it. Okay, so the masses didn't know anything about, except the present tense, except what was going on. Masharoim beinam, what they saw with their own eyes. Mashmua, mipia shmua, or shishamu mipia shmua, what they heard from other people talking. min ha'ma'orosh mimehem, of whatever occurred during their days. Lafikak Balak, therefore Balak, this king, shehaya melech, hine miyamim rabim yipaked etzlo mashasa Yaakov. You know what he had in his chronicles? This is going to blow you out of the water. He knew what Yaakov did to Shechem. You all know what happened in Shechem. Our sister Dinah got raped, and we wanted them to be held accountable, and they didn't want to be held accountable. These Hittites, these Canaanites, and they said, "No, we have a better idea. We want to marry you guys." And we said, "Yeah, right. Okay, we have a plan for you." So Shimon and Levi devised a plan. You guys get circumcised. Yeah, we can't marry you if you're not circumcised. So
do you think that was the right
let's talk about that. Yeah. Let's talk. I'm going to explain why it was correct, but let's hold off on the judgment for now. Let's just go through the story and then we'll get to the judgment. Okay. So what happens? So Shimon and Levi go in there and wipe them out on the third day of the circumcision because it's a very hard time. It's not an easy time physically. So basically, who really wiped them out? Shimon and Levi wiped them out. Was Yaakov exactly happy? Was he happy with what they did? For all practical purposes, no. He was not happy with what they did. In fact, he took away their status. Okay? Shimon would have been king. Levi would have been the priest. Of course, they got it back because later it was given to Judah and then came back to them because they didn't involve themselves with the sin of the golden calf. Now you ask a very good question. Is it really right what they did? Do you know there's 7 Noachide laws? Do you know one of those laws is to set up a system of justice? Did you know that the violation of a Noachide law is death? Do you know that this whole city was well aware that their leader committed such an atrocious act and did not hold him accountable? Therefore, according to many opinions, this was extremely justified. The correct vision. I understand it. That's all I'm going to tell you. If you don't understand it yet, it's fine. We can have the discussion later. Okay? But there is an answer. There may be others. Maybe you'll share yours. Okay. So let's go back into the text. So he knew what happened with Yaakov. But again, the question begs itself. What did Yaakov have to do with this? Listen to this. When it says Yisrael, it means Yaakov. Yisrael Saba. Israel, our great-grandfather. Okay? When it says Yisrael, as opposed to Bnei Israel, Kahal, or Bnei Israel. Or, who was the other one? Ha'am. What do we see? That what Israel did to the Amorites. But one second. Ki hu haya rak ish echad. He was just one man. Ubnei Beiso Masei Mispar. And his family was a very small number. What were they? 12? 13 people? Afa came, and even though there were only 12 people, Nitzach Uma Shlema, they wiped out an entire nation. Like it says, now listen to these words. If you look at chapter 48 in Genesis 22, which I think you'll find, where? Number 1. This is Yaakov's own words, okay? When it says, Israel said to Joseph, that means Yaakov said to his son on his deathbed, "Behold, I am going to die, and God will be with you. He will return you to the land of your forefathers. I have given you one portion over your brothers." Now, whether Joseph was deserving of a double portion is irrelevant. He had 2 sons who became tribes. So he wasn't the firstborn necessarily of Yaakov. It's true he was the firstborn of Rachel, who was Yaakov's true love. But we're not going to go deep into the whole idea of how he ended up with the double portion. But he says, I'm giving to you one portion over your brothers, which remember, there's Manasseh and Ephraim, right? Which I took, but this is the words that are important, which I took from the hand of the Amorite with my sword and my bow. Yaakov, he was involved in the fighting? No. Now the truth is, if you look at Rashi on that, it's not here, but there was another idea that basically what happened was that all the nations were actually gathering up like steam, because after the Shechem was wiped out, They knew they were going to be next, or they thought they might have been next, so they all got armed, and Yaakov stepped in and either was politically involved or, militarily involved, but everything calmed down. In other words, don't mess with the Jews. Okay? Don't mess with the Jews. So, but he says, I took from the hand of the Amorite, meaning I took Shechem away from them with my sword and my bow. Look at the Hebrew. Asher lekachti miyada amuri becharbi ubekashti. With my sword and my bow. You want to hear this? You're going to be blown away. Rashi says it's tefillah. Tefillah means prayer. Where's the Jews' strength? I know today the modern Zionist state wants to claim otherwise. Maybe it's in our power, in our brains. But no, I mean, it does say here, Rashi says, it was his brains and his prayers. He had a good strategy, but he prayed. Now listen to these words. I have to find my place again. Okay, page. So according to Chazal, in Baba Basra, page 123a, the explanation of what does it mean, my sword and my bow, it's the prayer. Now all this comes out great, because what happened? Balak, the king of Moab, he saw what Israel's Saba, right, our great-grandfather Yaakov did to the Amorites with his tefillah, which is what? Lefi shekol kocha b'piv, which was the power of the mouth. Therefore, you know what he did? He went out of his way to seek somebody who also had the power of his mouth. And who is that? Bilam. Al ken hishtadel hu gam ken acher echad. He also chased after somebody, shegam ken kocha b'piv, who also had the power of the gab, the power of the mouth. Lekach ne'amar, now we understand when it says Balak saw. What did he see? It doesn't say he heard. He saw all that happened, which was written down in the books of the Chronicles, because that's what all the kings of the world had. He saw with his own eyes what's written. When you read, you need eyes. Okay, today you have Braille and whatnot, but we're talking about the general way of reading is through looking with your eyes. He saw what was written and entered into his heart what we call cowardliness or fear. And he knew he had to act. He said to himself, oh my God, if 12 people could wipe out an entire nation, what's going to happen when I have 3 million people standing in front of me in the desert? Right? And we're going to discuss that number shortly. 3 million, you had 600,000 men between the age of 20 and 60, and you had their wives, and you had their children, and they had the older people. No doubt there was at least 2.5 million people. So he sees, if 12 people, this little tribe of family, could wipe out a whole nation, what's going to happen now that I'm standing there looking at 3 million people? So he says, Ma yasu atabiotam am rav vatsum, with such a great and mighty people. Therefore, it does not say the word Bnei Israel, children of Israel. It doesn't say the word Ha'am, the people, and it doesn't say the congregation. It says Israel, because Israel is always Israel Saba. It's referring to Jacob. That's who it's talking about. Now, what about Moab? So, meaning the masses of people. They are Klal Hamonah. That's the general masses of people. They didn't consider anything of the past. Remember, they were illiterate. They didn't have yesterday's newspaper. They didn't have any newspaper. They didn't have internet. They didn't have WhatsApp. They had nothing. Okay? So they couldn't think about yesterday. Kilo yodu mahu. They had no idea about Jacob and all that would happen. V'lo pachadu ki min hove. The only thing they feared was what was in front of them at the moment. And what did they see? They saw a great mighty nation. But remember the verse says, it says they saw the people because it was great. They feared because of the people. Now who are the people? Wait till you hear this. You have to have a seatbelt for this one. Masharu beinayim am rav batzum. That's what they saw, a great multitude. And the exact words are, V'yagar Moab mipnei ha'am ki ravu, that Moab grew very frightened because of the people, because there were mighty amount of people, there was masses. Hayahamon am shel Moab yireim mipnei shtei kitot. Now ready for this? They were afraid because of two groups of people that were in the desert. That's us, the Jewish people, and there was another group with us. Who was that other group? The mixed multitudes. He's going to bring down a measure that tells us the mixed multitudes was twice the amount that we were. Now if we were 3 million, that means there was another 6 million. It were a total of 9 million people. And now you understand that what they were afraid of, the Moab, it says they were afraid of because of the people, which is the Erev Rav, the mixed multitude, who was even greater than we were in terms of number. Listen to the words. We said they were afraid because of two groups. Lo ri'izeh k'ri'izeh. And neither group is exactly like each other. Why? Because they had a reason to be afraid of each one for a different reason. Ki mipnei ha'erev rav, on account of the mixed multitude, yurei machmas reboyim. They were afraid because of the multitudinous. You have a better word? Multitude. The masses. Ki isa the medrash is brought down in the medrash in the Mechilta in Parshas Bo, that the erev rav hayashtei pa'amim shisha ribo, that they were twice the amount of 600,000. Okay, so 1,000,002, mistama, most likely, men between the age of 20 and 60, plus all their wives and children and whatnot.
And the older and the younger.
And the older ones. And regarding them, regarding the Erev Rav, it says that Moab grew very frightened because of Ha'am, the people, Ki Rav Hu. And now he says it. Kara Ha'erev Rav b'shem Ha'am. We always see, anytime there are complaints in the desert, it's the Am. It's not Israel, and it's not Bnei Israel. It's Am, Ha'am. It's the mixed multitudes that were the troublemakers. Kilo Bnei Israel Hema. They were not the Jewish people. Remember, they all converted. Everyone converted in Mount Sinai, but they technically weren't the Jewish people when they left Egypt. Ki Ravu. Ki Rabim Hema Bemet. They really were a lot. But when it comes to the Bnei Israel, they weren't as much in comparison and relative to the Erev Rav. Lo yoru mehem mitzad raboim. So the Moab was not afraid of them from the aspect of amount, masses, but from a different angle. Ready for this? Amna mitzad acher haya moira Yisrael lehem. It was from a different angle that they had the fear of Israel upon them, and this is going to freak you out. When it says v'yakatz Moab mipnei bnei Israel, that Moab was disgusted mipnei, on account of, because of the Bnei Israel. Now, we're going to keep this in mind. We're talking about Moab, but the same word, v'yakatz, the word kotz means a thorn, like a thorn in your eye, a thorn in your side. But listen, it's not that we're going to try to explain what does it mean they were disgusted, and why don't we say they were a thorn in their eye, even though that's what it seems to be saying. It says the Yakatz Moab, and Moab was disgusted because of the children of Israel. So we find, if you go back to Exodus chapter 1, verse 12, it says about the Egyptians, V'yakutzu mipnei b'nei Israel, that they were disgusted. We're talking about the Egyptians, on account of the Jewish people, b'nei Israel. Don't tell me that it means the Jewish people were a thorn in their side. It might be true, but that's not what the verse means. Don't explain it that they were like thorns in their eyes, because if that would have been the case, then it would have said the Katsu B'nai Israel, that the B'nai Israel were poking them, so to speak. So what does it mean on account of? They were disgusted on account of, it says. They were disgusted on account of the Jewish people. So it must be the opposite, that really the Mitzrayim, the Egyptians, were comparing themselves to thorns in relative value to the Jewish people. And that's what I said earlier. We talk about thistles. You ever go, and maybe you haven't been to the far, what they call the Western United States, but if you saw an old movie, a Western, they called it, and a guy comes to town, and it's a ghost town, there's nobody there, and all that's in town is tumbleweeds, right? You hear the silence, and you little breeze, and you see the grass and balls running down the streets. That's all that's there, is weeds that are disconnected. It's so dry that they've already disconnected from the ground, right? They're cracked. What's that worth? Can you sell that on the market? Oh yeah, I got a town full of tumbleweeds, top real estate. No, the opposite. It's worthless. Remember when we went into Egypt, when we sent our spies, or our spies sent themselves, however you want to look at it, these spies went in, and you know what they said? We were like grasshoppers in their eyes. Remember we spoke about that? We are like grasshoppers in their eyes. They come back and say, everyone there's a giant, because it's called the inferiority complex. When you think of yourself as worth less, worth nothing, in the eyes, it's psychological, right? You're such a low self-esteem that you can't imagine you come to par. So the Egyptians, remember, we're talking about the Egyptians said this, and we're going to prove it in a second. But these are the words of the Egyptians. Now we're going to compare it because the same words are used here. Moab is saying the same thing. Listen to this. We already said this verse earlier tonight. If they looked at themselves as weeds, not dried out weeds, how did they look at the Jews? Like Geffen, like vineyards, like a healthy, plump fruit tree. As it says, we read this earlier in Psalms chapter 80, verse 9 and 10, which I think you could find number 3. It says, Geffen mimitzrayim tasiya. You caused the grapevine to travel out of Egypt. Tegaresh goyim v'tatera. And you expelled the nations and planted it. Penita lifana. You uprooted it. You cleared the path. Shetashresh rashea. You struck at its roots, v'tzmale aretz, and you filled the land with it. Balak said that, like the owner of a field, he's intent, he wants to put a vineyard in his field that's full of weeds. He rips out the weeds from where? The root. You don't want it to grow again, you gotta get the roots. Otherwise, if you just take a weed whacker and clear the field, you know what's going to happen. The weeds are going to come back even stronger. And once you get rid of the weeds, then you can put the seeds. In order to put proper, healthy plants in its place. This is what the Egyptians feared. The Egyptians actually feared this. This natural fear for them. Why? That the Jewish people were planting themselves in the land of Egypt like grapevines. This, I have to tell you, I don't talk about politics much, but unfortunately, and the Jewish community in America won't last either. It's bound to happen one way or another, but we hope that they will leave before they get thrown out. But because the jealousy of us being like Geffen, a healthy plant that's planting in, listen to what the Egyptians said to themselves. Kekotz munad kolehem. Right? We didn't get there yet, but if you go to Exodus chapter 1, verse 10, it says very cryptically, because you don't hear the pronoun. It says, he said to his people, this is Pharaoh, behold, the people of the children of Israel are more numerous and stronger than we. Get ready. Let us deal shrewdly with them, lest they increase and a war befall us. They join our enemy, listen carefully, wage war against us, and depart from the land. What would they care? If you have an enemy who's waging war with you, or maybe will, and they leave, aren't you happy? Wouldn't you be happy if they left? It's not talking about the Jews leaving. They're the natives to the land. We take over, and then they have to leave. That's tragedy. Now listen to words again. And we'll read the Rashi on that. Pharaoh is worried that the Jewish people are increasing, becoming a fifth column, joining up with our enemies, and wage war against us, and depart from the land. But who? They're talking about themselves. Listen to Rashi, and depart from the land against our will. What do you mean against our will? You mean because they were slaves and our slaves left, but they just waged war against us. Our rabbis have interpreted Pharaoh as a person who curses himself, but ascribes his curse to others. and it is as if it were written, we will depart from the land, and they will take possession of it. In other words, what's the greatest tragedy for a nation? To be displaced, to be replaced by someone else. If they would have waged war and then left, that would be a sigh of relief. But if they would wage war and be so successful and kick us out, that would be a tragedy. And that's what it's talking about. Because that's how they felt. They are like weeds, tumbleweeds. What do you do with weeds? You get rid of them. The Geffen takes a healthy planting. Okay, so that's what it says. Now we understand when it says the Yakutsu Mipnei, that they felt disgusted on account of or because of the children of Israel. You know what they felt like? You ever go on a picnic and take a blanket? Whether it's on the beach where there's sand, you have to get rid of the sand when you fold up your blanket. They felt worthless, like a piece of sand or like a piece of weed that was, you go and sit on a nice green grass, you're still going to get on the blanket some pieces of weed and grass, and you shake it out. That's how they felt. That's the value that they had for themselves in respect to us, because they considered us to be Geffen. And therefore, when it says the Yakatz Moav Mibnei Bnei Israel, they were disgusted, they were afraid, lest that it be Moab would be thrown away like a weed from the land, because the Geffen would come and be replanted by Hashem, who took us out of Egypt and divorced or exiled the people, the 7 Canaanite nations who were there before us, and plant us in their place. That's why it says Bnei Israel, not Saba. He's no longer around. He's already in the world to come, and his children are coming. And it does, but not the Erev Rav. Listen, the Erev Rav came in, but it wasn't because of any merit that they had. Remember Star Trek, the Klingons? Like, what kind of name is a Klingon? It's a parasite, a Klingon. So the parasite, the Erev Rav, the mixed multitudes, only left Egypt on our backs. And they only entered the land of Israel on our backs. It's because of us. They joined up. So they didn't enter the land on their own merits. That's why they're called Ha'am. And the Am's not being used here, but it's Bnei Israel. Now, we want to know what's the great value that they had. What other nation got to live in the land of Israel? Only the Jewish people and the Erev Rav. So what great merit did they have to get into the land? It's only because of the parasitic nature. It was on our backs. And now we're in the home stretch. So now it says, afterwards it says that Moab said to the elders of Midian, this is going to blow you guys away. They said to the elders of Midian, right? Moab. The whole Moab went to the Midian. Like, what are they getting Midian involved? What do you need Midian involved? The truth is, it wasn't Midian's fight. But you know what? You get allies. You want to have an ally. You need assistance. You're going up against the Jewish people. So they find other like-minded people. So they went and they said these words. Moab said to the elders of Midian, now the congregation, that's when the word the congregation, kahal, is being used, are going to lick us up like an ox. Guess what? Yosef is called kahal, and he is also referred to as an ox. And we're going to see it shortly. Okay. This is the home stretch. What did Midian see? What exactly did the Midianites see to somehow conceive of getting in a fight that wasn't theirs? So Rashi explains, if you go to Numbers 31 verse 6, it specifically says when we went up against the Midianites, God says that the Jewish people should go out, Otam, Ves Pinchas, right? You and Pinchas, take Pinchas with you. Why Pinchas? Rashi says over there, to take revenge for the sale of Yosef. To take revenge because, now, Pinchas's, here we have it written down here in the notes. This is on page 2. See the verse 5, source sheet number 5, on verse 2. The other way around. Page 2, source sheet number, the source number 5. So Moses sent them 1,000 from each tribe to the army, along with Pinchas, Why would he send Pinchas to fight against the Midianites? Right? It says Otam ves Pinchas, because what I highlighted here, another interpretation, he sought the vengeance of Yosef, who is his maternal grandfather. We know Pinchas was a Kohen. He comes from the Levi family. Nevertheless, on his mother's side, meaning his maternal grandfather, it's really his father's mother, right? We know that what? How do we know that Pinchas' mother was descended from Yosef? Because it says, Eliezer, the son of Aaron, took himself one of the daughters of Putiel. Okay? Maybe I highlighted the wrong thing. So Eliezer is the son of Aaron. Okay, I don't know what I did here. The point here was that, here it is, Exodus. If you go to Exodus 6:25, that's why I brought this down. That Eliezer, son of Aaron, took himself one of the daughters of Putiel as a wife. She bore him Pinchas. Okay, and these are the heads of the Levites according to their families. And then you have to turn the page to number 3. So what does Rashi say over there? One of the daughters of Putiel, of the seed of Jethro, who fattened the calves for idolatry. And Rashi says there, he was also the seed of Yosef, who defiled and fought against his passion when he was tempted by Potiphar's wife. So we're talking about Pinchas being from his father's mother's side, from Midian, because who is Jethro? Jethro was a Midianite. So on one level you say, what is Pinchas, the Midianite, taking revenge against the Midianites? But he was taking revenge for Yosef, who was sold to Midian. Look at this. Look what it says here. Look in Genesis 37, verse 36. It says, V'hamidani machru oso lePotifar. That would be found, that's number 6 on page 3. The Midianites sold him to Egypt. We're talking about the sale of Yosef. So who else would be upset to take revenge? So there's this whole idea of kahal, which we're going to see in a second. How do I know that Yosef is called kahal? Look where it says in Genesis, again, it's still 37, but it's verse 35. I'm sorry, it's chapter 35, verse 11. Goy ukahal goyim. That when, here I have it written down here. Look at number 7. God said to him, I am the Almighty God, be fruitful and multiply. A nation and a multitude of nations shall come in distance from you, and kings shall come forth from your loins. So goy ukahal goyim, this is talking to Yaakov. So this Rashi says, a nation and it says nations, see in the middle? It's talking about Menashe and Ephraim, who were destined to emanate from Yosef. Okay? So that's what goy ukahal goyim. We're talking about the Bnei Yosef. So Rashi explained that over there. It's talking about Yosef. Therefore, what did Moab say to the elders of Midian? That also you have to be afraid because of the kahal. In other words, Moab was trying to get an ally and saying, Midian, if you don't join up with us now, they're going to get you later. You might as well join us now while we're still around and more numbers can fight the Jewish people. Because eventually they're going to get you, because your ancestors the Midianites sold Yosef. So we're talking about his own progeny would come eventually to take revenge. And not only that, but they're described as kahal. In other words, when Moab comes and tries to convince, they use already a language, kahal, meaning we know you sold Yosef. Kahal is referring to Yosef's children, who's going to take revenge. And we know that Yosef is the ox. He's called the firstborn ox. Okay? So that's why the language here is, now they will lick you up. Lick you up. That's the word. The congregation will lick you up, all surrounding, like the way that an ox licks up. And that's That's a beautiful explanation here. B'nei Yosef b'chor shur haima, that the children of Yosef are the firstborn ox. That's why it mentions they will lick them up like an ox. Kedei likach nikmas ashur, in order to take out revenge, as the shur would do.